Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Timothy Watson and Dr. Sarah Pope Miksinski.
Welcome. This is the Global Regulatory Town Hall. My name is Sarah Pope Miksinski, and on behalf of both ISPE as well as my co-chair for the quality track, Tim Watson, who should be joining me up here. He's dressed up like James Bond right now and is running the app for the questions to be delivered later. So we're happy that you're here. We have a very exciting discussion planned. And without further ado, I want to just talk a little bit about the vision for the town hall that we have. The vision is really one of big picture thinking, of taking our hats off as regulators, health authorities, as industry, as academicians, and really working collectively as professionals to really deliver products to patients who need them. So the conversation today will hopefully be robust, informative, engaging. However, what it will not be is a specific discussion of projects or anything that's company specific. The format that we have this afternoon, I'm still on a different time zone. The format will be that we'll have 4 short presentations to begin. And then after those presentations, we will open the floor for questions. We'll have an esteemed moderator that we will introduce later. And we will have a larger panel for that particular discussion. So let me just conserve time and get started with that. I'm going to start out by introducing the 4 speakers all at one time. The first speaker will be David Churchward. David has been a GMP inspector with MHRA since 2004. He's responsible for the strategic direction of the inspectorate. David has extensive involvement in regulatory harmonization and collaboration through BICS, and also is the BICS delegate to the ICH Assembly. Our next speaker will be Dr. Joey Gause. She is the group lead of inspections at WHO. She's based in Geneva, and I talked to her beforehand, and she had quite a flight to get here, and ran a rather large race on Saturday, as I recall. Dr. Gause holds both a science degree and a pharmacy degree. She also has a degree in pharmacology, a master's degree, and a PhD in pharmaceuticals. Our third speaker this afternoon will be Dr. Lawrence Yu, who is the Deputy Director of the Office of Pharmaceutical Quality at the FDA, where he oversees new generic and biotech product quality review. Dr. Yu's research interests have centered on the prediction of oral drug delivery and the development of pharmaceutical quality by design. Dr. Yu is also a fellow and the past section chair of the AAPS, as well as an associate editor of the AAPS Journal. And our final speaker will be Rafael Sanchez Pereira. Rafael is a pharmacist and biochemist. He is the manager of the Office of Quality Evaluation for Small Molecules at Anvisa, and is responsible in that capacity for quality evaluation of synthetic and semi-synthetic drugs. He's a former quality reviewer for post-approval changes at Anvisa and has also worked at the Directory for Authorization and Registrations at the same organization. So with that introduction, let me introduce the rest of the panel as well at this point, and then we will have the 4 folks come up. The next introduction I have is Renata de Lima Suarez. Renata is a pharmacist with 10 years of experience in regulation and health surveillance. She is a health and regulation expert from Anvisa and is now working with safety and efficacy assessment. We have Commander Emily Thacker. Emily is a team leader with the drug shortage staff at FDA. She joined the FDA in 1999 as a consumer safety officer and then joined the Office of Regulatory Policy in Cedar. She's been in her current position with drug shortages since 2011, and she has a Bachelor of Science from Rutgers that was obtained in 1999. The next member of our panel will be Dr. Rapti Madhuraba. She is a division director in the Office of Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Assessment in the Office of Pharmaceutical Quality at FDA. Rapti has extensive regulatory experience in the CMC assessment of new investigational drug and generic applications. Rapti has a PhD in chemical engineering and a master's degree in biochemistry. And so with that, those are the introductions for the larger panel. What I'd like to do right now is introduce the first of our 4 speakers, David Churchward. So David.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'd just like to give my thanks to ISPE for inviting me to participate in this regulatory town hall, and just to spend a few brief minutes to outline some of the key priorities for my agency, MHRA, over the coming year. So I think I just wanted to highlight 4 of the key areas for us in our agency, and the first being I think a topic close to everyone's heart in the room, which is international harmonisation, as it affects us all. For my agency, we see an important role for us in our continued leadership in a number of different international forums, be that ICH, ICMRA, and BICS, just to name a few. That's really important. We see that as an important harmonisation and globalisation initiative in terms of not just the standards, the words on the page that industry works to, but also the delivery of those standards, how they're interpreted to make sure that there really is convergence and ultimately harmonisation in that assessment. We're going to continue working with our international partners in bilateral situations also to look at capacity building across the network in terms of some of the training that we do, some of which is in conjunction with our colleagues in the US FDA, and also work that we've done over the past year with colleagues at WHO, and I see that continuing. And that's really important in terms of confidence building to support other GMP reliance initiatives that further facilitate that joined up working, reduction of duplication and harmonisation. The next key topic for us I've grouped under digital health and the topic of Pharma 4.0, which I know that there's a lot of work going on in ISPE in that area. We've recently set up an expert technology group within our inspectorate who are tasked with horizon scanning and making sure that our inspectorate is fit for the future in terms of that new emerging technologies and the approach to digital. So some of the work that we're doing in those areas in sub-teams relates to data integrity, computer systems validation. We've got a team looking specifically at AI and blockchain, Internet of Things, and also rapid data capture systems. Just on the topic of AI, I think the validation of AI will be an interesting challenge in the future, not just in medicines, but also in software as a medical device. And to that end, MHRA have just announced some work that we're doing with NHS Digital, so the healthcare provider, or the digital arm of the healthcare provider in the UK, to develop synthetic data sets which are specifically designed to help in the validation, the industry can use in the validation of AI systems so that we can make sure that there is no bias in that data set, and that gives assurance of some of the data coming out of the AI software. That's still early days in that work, but that's quite an exciting piece of work that's going forward. And finally, in that area, I just wanted to talk about increased use of technology to perform our regulatory functions. And we feel that there's a number of opportunities for a regulatory big data approach to oversight throughout the medicine's life cycle, and that's some work that we'll be taking forward in the coming years. The third topic that I have there is the area of personalised medicines. We're seeing increasing trends in both high-tech and personalised medicines. We're seeing that evidence through a group that we have for industry to come and engage with us through our innovation office for breaking technologies, new technologies, but also in clinical trials. So we're seeing those come through more, and the particular challenges that we see in terms of the interpretation of GMP and some of the regulatory frameworks, and those we're working through at present. And there's a particular piece of work that we'll be taking forward in the future to address some of those regulatory and supply chain challenges, such as manufacturing at the point of care, be that making a medicine which is manufactured in a central premises, making that fit for administration, maybe thawing and making ready for administration, or true manufacture at the point of care because the product is perhaps less stable and not able to be manufactured for stock. What we're trying to do there is to review the regulations that we have in the UK to create an enabling regulatory environment. Our current regulations were designed based on the historical approach of make large batches with long expiries, put them into distribution network, and times are changing, so we need to make sure that the regulations change with that to accommodate those new supply chains. And the final topic I wanted to mention relates to changes to the MHRA itself. In 2015, we embarked on a program called Operational Transformation to revolutionise how the agency works and to maximise its impact in both the UK and international health systems. And there were three main aspects to the case for change that we were trying to address. Firstly, that our core IT infrastructure in the agency is at the end of its life and needs to be replaced. We want to build on the agency's globally recognised expertise across a number of different life cycle areas. And we also want to try to future-proof the agency and make sure that it's fit for the future. So we're aiming to be more flexible in the delivery of regulatory services across the product life cycle, which is something that in the UK we feel we have a particular opportunity to provide in terms of a single point of contact for healthcare assessment, product assessment, implementation through the National Health Service, and then completing that circle with the use of real-world data in the MHRA through our clinical practice research data link. So some topics there that are particular priorities for us in the coming year, many of which have the global and a harmonisation theme. I'm pleased to discuss any of those in the Q&A session later on. So thank you very much for your attention.
So I'm pleased next to invite Dr. Joey Gowles from WHO to the podium. Joey?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you about the World Health Organization and the globalization and the focus from WHO perspective on globalization and where we're going. So first of all, I would like to invite your attention to our DG, who's speaking on behalf of the World Health Assembly, as well as the 194 member states that belong to World Health Organization, where DG is saying, together we are a healthier world. We are for a healthier world. And that immediately takes us to health for all. Now, in order to do that, there must be a program that is looking after health. There must be a program that looks after medicine. And that program is the Essential Medicines and Health Product Program, which I'm a member of. The vision and the mission of this specific program is to improve and sustain access to quality medicines and health products. In order to do that, there are two specific work streams. The one is to make sure that there's a strategic role in terms of facilitation, and the second is in guardians. So facilitation is looking at innovation specifically, and also at increased access. When we look at the guardian aspect, we look at regulatory capacity building and everything to do with regulatory capacity building, making sure that there's regulatory systems in place in all the member states, all 194 member states, to ensure health for the population in each of those countries. Just quickly, within this program of ours, we have various work streams, various activities, and one is looking at innovation and access. The second is looking at medicines, specifically regulations and health technologies. Under health technologies and medicines, we have the standards of norms, we have the regulatory system strengthening, we have the pre-qualification team that is, so to speak, registering medicines, and we have the safety and vigilance. All of these different product streams have only one specific globalized view, and that is to focus on outcome. Now, when we look at these focus on outcome, and we take it further into the globalization program, we see that the technologies and standards and norm aspect relates to harmonizing norms and standards specifically, making sure that there's common practices across the entire globe when we look at standards and practices, looking at the international proprietary names, looking at the international pharmacopoeia, and looking at the list of essential products that is required in each and every country. When we look at national regulatory strengthening, we see that there's specific systems in place to ensure that out of the 194 member states, of which 100 member states don't have any systems in place, that we start building capacity in those specific countries. Looking at joint reviews, making sure that there's a common approach in terms of dossier review, in terms of clinical trial review, and then, of course, benchmarking the national regulatory authorities. In terms of the pre-qualification team that looks at the registration of a product under the umbrella of WHO, which specifically focus on HIV medicines, malaria medicine, TB medicines, even including something like mosquito nets, because that's also malaria prevention. We look at aspects that need to be strengthened. We look at how to evaluate. We pull in regulators from across the globe, we train them, and we teach them on assessment and inspections. And lastly, we look at safety and vigilance, where we are all aware that prior to the registration or the pre-qualification of a product, there's very little knowledge about that product, but when we put that product out on the market, post-marketing surveillance is becoming increasingly more important across the globe. And in terms of detection and facilitation of substandard medicine, a very important role for WHO. And lastly, the new kid on the block is looking at antimicrobial resistance. Globalized, looking at antimicrobial resistance. So what is the vision of WHO and what is the vision of my unit that I'm responsible for? We want to make sure that every child, every man and every woman has access to quality essential medicines, vaccine and other health products, and that they can lead a healthy and productive life. And we get this vision from the member states that is directing the World Health Organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, someone I've had the pleasure of working with for a number of years, Dr. Lawrence Yu from FDA.
Well, thanks, Stella. Thanks, ISP, for the invitation. And last Friday, I got an email from Mary of ISPE asking me whether I'm going to have slides or not. I recognize I was on the town hall. I was supposed to give a 5 minutes talk. And of course, after half hours, I'm not going to use any slides. And of course, I asked the organizer, what do you guys want to know from me? And they said, Tim said, Lawrence, you can talk anything you want. So one of the, I want to say that since the OPQ formation of 2015, that under Mike's Copcher's leadership, we set up a strategic priority for the next 5 years, and initiated 2018. We talk about collaboration, we talk about innovation, we talk about engagement, and we talk about communication. In the pre-marketing assessment, we have two major initiatives going on within OPQ FDA. The first initiative is integrated quality assessment. We implement integrated quality assessment in 2015, emphasize expertise in drug substance, drug product, manufacturing, and biopharmaceutics. Because this team-based environment, we have continued to seeking the enhancement in terms of collaboration within team members, and also collaboration, integration of our assessment and inspection. One of the beautiful things we found outcome is truly investigators and our assessors working together ensure the quality we approved, application we approved is of a high quality. So we continue to do enhancement in integrate quality assessment. Second initiative we introduced last year, and the name was come out 2015, we called CASA, Knowledge Added Assessment and Structure Application. It's always my dream that when they come to FDA, I'm a modeler, all the data will be available at the fingertips. With the advances of IT technology, with the digitalization, and the PDF files is really difficult for our reviewer to see the information because it's not retrievable. In fact, you have to open the file. So therefore, in the CASA initiative, we have a knowledge assessment, and we have an initial success in generic space. In fact, our data will be available at the fingertips of our assessors. You're looking for previously approved application, you're looking for impurity, the criteria will be available. In fact, when will be approved, what is the data approved, will be available. So truly enhance our assessment. In the post-marketing arena, we have two initiatives major going on, is quality metrics, which we talked about here initiatively. We engage sites. And also, significant issue we want to know is a dashboard of a current state of the quality. We issued the first report this year about the state of quality of facility in the current states. So these two initiatives are actively ongoing. In the inspection arena, we issued the concept operation, and in fact, myself had the opportunity to working on it, work with our OIA colleagues, our investigator, work with our compliance colleagues, working ourselves, we developed a concept of operation. I believe this development brought in two significant advancements in our overall FDA's operation of assessment. Number one, we have a specific timeline. As you know, in our application review, we have a specific time, whether 3 months, 6 months, 10 months, so on. But in the inspection arena, after investigation, you will not receive anything from us for quite some time. Now we call it 90-day letter. In other words, post-investigation, in 90 days, you will receive a letter from FDA that tells you the status of your facility, whether no action indicated, whether volunteer action indicated, or, I'm sorry, you're in trouble, OAI indicated. Okay? You don't want to deal with this OAI status. And another significant development going on, continuous is NIPA project about investigation, digitalization, and development. I want to emphasize again with the last 10 minutes, the second is we continue make significant progress in continuous manufacturing. In fact, we approved 6 the application last month with a review clock of 3 months. So we want to thank you for continued support, continuous manufacturing, advanced manufacturing. We want to thank you, continue to collaborate with us to work together for our patient, work together, advance quality. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lawrence. And our final speaker for the introductory presentations is Rafael Sanchez Pereira. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. So I represent Anvisa, the Brazilian regulatory agency. Just before I start with the slides, it will be a very quick presentation. Just would like to point out that we have in our priorities to be the first wave submission in Brazil, in the world. So we want the drugs to come to Brazil as quick as they come to the United States, to the Europe, and an important part of this is to have harmonization and also to have some recognition, some reliance on other agencies' work. So just a quick overview here of Anvisa's structure. Just to remind you that Anvisa is a quite big agency that takes care of a lot of products, not only drugs, but also food, cosmetics, agrochemicals, devices. So it's a lot of, we say internally that there are at least 5 different Anvisas within Anvisa. So it's important to have it in mind when we talk about Anvisa. Now, when we talk about reliance, which is an important tool for us to have, to be participating of the first wave of submission, we have some needs. We need to have equivalence of rules, which means harmonization. We need to work in the same manner of the other agencies, so we have to have the same requirements for the companies to be able to submit the drug at the same time in Brazil. Now, in order to practice the reliance, we also need trust, and we need to develop a relationship with other agencies. So, if possible, at the reviewers level. I mean, the reviewers must understand how the other reviewers from the other agencies work, so we have the opportunity to understand and to practice in the same way. So it's important to develop a trust and a communication, if possible, at the reviewers level. And also, it's important to have the equivalence of the documents submitted. In many times, because the rules are different, because the requirements are different, we have submission of different documents in Brazil and in other countries. So it makes more difficult to have the same decision or to have the decision at the same time. We have so many harmonization actions in order to achieve our goal to harmonize the rules with other countries, with other regions. Anvisa is currently a member of the ICH. We want to apply for the management committee. We have implementation plans for all the guidelines, for tier 2 and 3 guidelines too. And we at the moment, we participate in not all because we have some limitations of human resources, but we participate of most of EWGs and IWGs in ICH. As for BICS, we also want to apply. We also made an application for membership. We had a recent inspection from BICS, and we are still waiting for the result. We have recently revised our GMP requirements in order to harmonize with BICS participating countries. So the resolution 201 is an important landmark in order to harmonize the GMP requirements too. And we have some internal reliance actions, some regarding biologicals. It's already working. We have some different review procedure when the product is already approved by some other authority. And we have similar procedures under development for small molecules, both efficacy and safety and quality review. And when we talk about harmonization and reliance, we know it's an important tool for us to have drugs, access to drugs in a very quickly way. But we have some challenges. We need to fit the rules, the guidelines into our legal framework, which is quite different from US and most of European frameworks. We have the interpretation problem, which is even more difficult when we have not participated in the elaboration of the guideline. We have the discussion with stakeholders. We have some limitations in workforce. And also knowledge. We need to learn a lot more in order to implement some guidelines. And we also need the sponsor submission equivalence. I mean, we need to the sponsors to submit the same documentation, which is sometimes not possible because the rules are still different. But we, after we harmonize the requirements, we also need the sponsors to submit an equivalent documentation. So in a very quick way, that's it, and I am happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all the speakers. I want to take a minute and ask our audience to acknowledge all the 4 speakers again. All speakers were given 5 minutes. And as most people who give presentations can attest to, fitting a meaningful amount of substrate into 5 minutes is incredibly difficult. So thank you all. So we will be transitioning now to the question and answer part of this session. And I would introduce this part of the session to you as the audience as a special opportunity to access a really broad and global spectrum of regulatory talent on the stage. So this is a great thing, a great opportunity for us. In order to field a number of questions, we'll be taking questions from the floor, as well as from an app called Pigeonhole. And I have a little bit of background. So we will be using something called Pigeonhole Live for the Q&A session. It is a simple interactive mobile website where you can submit questions to the panel without signing up in front of them. You can also vote on questions. So if you see a question that you think is of particular importance to you or your company or your organization, you can vote to elevate that question. If you have a smartphone, tablet, or a laptop computer with you, you launch the browser, enter www.pigeonhole.at into the address bar, and the passcode here is on the slide. Again, to scope the question and answer, I think I mentioned this once before, but it's an important point. We have a lot of talent on the stage, but the one thing that the discussion will not address will be project-specific issues. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Roger Nosal, who will be moderating the question and answer. Roger is a vice president and head of global CMC at Pfizer. He's contributed to the evolution of quality by design and has advocated for global harmonization through many organizations and through many years. He is currently the chair of ISPE Pharmaceutical Engineering and co-chair of the ISPE Regulatory Track and DIA Quality Program Committees. Roger?
I have to update my thing. Fran? You forgot your gavel. Oh, good. Okay, so my role here is to moderate and provide the questions to the panelists. I don't get to answer them myself, which is fine. It's probably better that way. So Tim, can we call up the first question from Pigeonhole? And by the way, if anyone has a question and they want to come up and talk, there's a microphone over here. There's one over there, just over here? Okay, so there's one microphone over here. So please feel free to do so. Okay, so the first question through Pigeonhole is, can someone provide an update on the MRA? Will the EMA and FDA share progress metrics? Also, with MHRA leaving, what impact will this have on the EMA annual inspection plans? I think we'll answer the first two questions. I think it's difficult to speculate on what's going to happen with MHRA, so I'd like to say that to take you off the hook a little bit, David, and not answer that question. But anybody want to volunteer on the MRA question, or do I have to call on somebody? David?
Okay, so I can give you an update on this, and actually it's really helpful that it was submitted through Pigeonhole because I could get the figures in time to, which I wouldn't have been able to call off the top of my head, so that's good. So an update on the MRA is that it's now fully operational between the European Union and the US. So the assessment of all the 28 European member states was completed by FDA on time, and that's been fully in force since July. There's work ongoing to look at extending the scope to vaccines and to veterinary products. And there's still work ongoing to consider whether clinical materials can be included as well, but I think that's a piece of work for a longer period of time than that. In terms of the what that's meant in practice, there has been active use of that agreement. I've got some figures here that they're European focused, so I'm afraid I don't have the FDA equivalent figures. But if we look at the agreement which came into force in its transitional form in October 2017, so that's roughly 22 months ago. If we look at the 22 months prior to October 17 compared to the 22 months afterwards, there has been a 75% reduction in EU inspections performed in the US. And on a national basis, the MHRA has had 28 inspection requests from FDA. So I guess those would have been inspections that the FDA would have been performing had we not been able to step in. And we've also provided responses to 75 information requests that might be providing inspection reports or other intelligence. So I think we've got a good start there, and we're starting to see that information coming through. So hopefully that can continue to build.
Very good, David. Lawrence, did you want to respond on the FDA side?
Yes, I guess I added on some additional information. By the way, all of us cannot see you at all, so you feel free to ask questions. You're safe. In the FDA side, that yes, clearly agreement was built between EMA and FDA, and Roger, if you could ask me yesterday, I could have been doing investigation, so I give you a number, but I don't have a specific number, but I heard it's roughly about with the 100 plus. Don't quote me on the news media, please don't report it. Roughly about more than 138, I remember correctly, that the inspection was waived. Some of them work in GMP arena. If you look at FDA's constant operation, we basically have 4 types of inspection: pre-approval inspection, post-approval inspections. These are 2 types of inspection are related application review, which is not a part of agreement, but significant part of agreement is surveillance inspection, which is a significant part. It's a typical called GMP inspection, which is a waiver significant number. So in a way, that certainly FDA invests a lot of resources trying to get an agreement between EMA, countries, and FDA, but a lot of things we can see the outcome of this year. Significant number of a surveillance inspection to the European countries were waived. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. And that's a good start, and I think it's a start in the right direction.
Yes.
So congratulations. Oh, now the lights are on, so we can see who's talking.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful.
So we have a question over here, yes.
I don't know. Okay, it's working. Great.
Oh, yeah.
I had a question for Dr. Yu and actually any other panelists as well regarding this idea of knowledge-aided structured assessment. I know there's a CASA initiative that's underway at the FDA, and I want to understand: are there any potential opportunities in the future for industry to be in discussions with the FDA around what they're doing? Because there's a number of companies that are developing solutions in that same vein to help structure process development information under a quality by design framework.
Well, absolutely, thank you. So, I joined the FDA many years ago. I'm a mathematical modeler, so I always dreamed that FDA has all the data, And of course, 20 years ago when I joined the FDA does have data, but it's put all the, we call the document room in the basement, in the hard copies. So it takes effort to find them. But nowadays, getting better, electronic will be available, but all in PDF file. So still in a way it's not available because you have to open even every single PDF, find out the information. The reason is the digitalization going on. We do want to make sure that all the knowledge in the approved application will be available. So that's why CASA initiative is coming with this way, is basically take advantage of advances IT technology. But what certainly the FDA, we would be happy to talk with you right now. Significant progress has been made in the generic field, especially the product arena and the manufacturing as well. In the manufacturing, actually, we go through the testing period right now, but it certainly will be applied to new drug as well. So in the new drug space, there's two initiatives going on. One is within FDA, we call the CASA initiative, but also another initiative going on, which you can help. We call the PQCMC, Product Quality, Chemistry, Manufacturing Control Arena. What we're looking for is a submission, electronic submission, not just a PDF file, basically in the HTML file in format, so that the format, once you submit it, we can read it directly. So therefore, I think we had a meeting with the pharma a couple months ago about the participation of you involved supporting in advanced overall quality assessment digitalization. And we talk about a lot of knowledge digitalization. I think we made some progress, and you, in a way, you can help. And we also make a progress in terms of, we develop a product, we're manufacturing, we go to drug substance, we're going to buy farm. Each segment has been significantly advanced. Certainly, we will be happy to talk with you, but as a pharma, at the innovator side, especially PQCMC, has been a significant progress. And basically, you submit the data in digital format, not in PDF file. I don't want to say PDF file is not useful. PDF file is better than paper copies, but it still is not so useful because it's not readable. So we spend a lot of resources from software help so that all the information which is approved many years ago can read, stored in the database format, in the structured format, so that in the future will be available and also facilitate lifecycle management. Thank you.
So Lawrence, I just want to carry on a little off of that question. One of the discussion points that has occurred at some of the meetings where CASA has been introduced is how you want to use that data and why it's valuable to have it in a structured format. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So thank you very much. Right now, if you look at our overall assessment, right, so you submit in the PDF file, our reviews, our assessor look at your data, sometimes some of the specification table for drug substance, specification for drug product, stability table, we have to sometimes either retype or cut and paste. But in the future, will be electronically input. So instead of take time, effort, now all automatic. Okay. So this is a truly advantage to you and to us. And it's also for life cycle management, because once you put it in PDF file, next time you change it, you have another version. That's right. But the digital format, for example, in specification digital format, you make changes, will be automatically saved. In fact, not only saved, will specific date will be available. All the information will be available. What time you submit, what time is the record, because the decades ago, if you look at it, like when the FDA look at our email, our inbox always full because don't have enough space. Nowadays, the space is so enormous, never before. So I think it's time for pharma all together, industry together, advance the next level, which is the digitalization of a submission.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be some sympathetic ears. Many companies are struggling through the same thing, trying to manage their data. Thank you. Tim, can we go to the next question? Because I don't see anybody standing here.
I guess we can see you now, so be careful.
So would Anvisa be willing to expand upon the current status of ICH integration now that they are members of ICH? What do you see as opportunities and challenges for harmonization? Raphael?
Well, yes. Sorry. We want to expand our current status on ICH. We are willing to be at the management committee. It depends on the ICH approval, so we are waiting for it. We have some internal efforts regarding regulatory reliance. We also have some efforts to implement the ICH guidelines. As I said in my presentation, the difficulties that we have are mostly related to interpretation, mainly of old guidelines, because new guidelines are, in my vision, are easier to implement for two reasons. One, because we normally participate the elaboration of the guidelines, so we know why is it there and what is not there and why, so it's easier in this way. And the other point is that old guidelines are, in my impression, they are a little more vague in some points, and it makes difficult for us to understand where is the agency, until where is the agency going. So we have some conversation with other agencies, and it is important for us to understand and to have this true implementation of the practice of other agencies. And also we are applying for BICS membership soon.
Very good. Renata, did you want to add anything?
No, that's it. I think Rafael was perfect. Okay. Sometimes we struggle, we have a limitation to adopt these guidelines because Brazil has some particularities, some specifications, and sometimes people are used to work in some way, and we need some time to train everyone and to adopt that guide.
Very good. And Rafael, in your presentation, you said you want Brazil to be in that first wave of countries that receive submissions like the US and Europe. Do you see ICH facilitating or enabling that to happen more rapidly?
Yes, not only ICH, but ICH is one of the points. In order to be the first wave, we need to be at the same requirements, because companies will not add so many things to the dossier to submit it in Brazil. So we need the same requirements. We need to participate the early stages of the development. It's also important. And we need flexibility, because early stage drugs are still they are not in the same way. They are not. The discussion is not the same as already developed drugs. So it's important for us to have harmonization and also flexibility in order to receive these dossiers. But so it's a huge advantage for our patients.
So being involved in development early is going to you're going to need to expand your capacity, most likely.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Anybody up? Nope. Tim? So yesterday in the CAR-T presentations, it was stated that production batches were released with OOS and deviations. It was said that FDA and EMA is okay with this to get drugs to patients quickly. Is that true? David, do you want to address that?
Okay. So there is some content on these situations in Part 4 of EU GMP, which is the new ATMP guidelines. I think we just need to be really careful or really clear what we're talking about here. So if the question is, are we okay with products going out to patients that have OOS and deviations because the system is poorly controlled and we're not doing the right thing through the quality system, the answer is absolutely no. But with the unique properties of advanced therapies, particularly when some of these are life-saving treatments and they may be using the patient's own tissue or blood as starting materials, we know from time to time there will be situations where those products do not meet their registered specification. And some of that might be it's a very well-controlled manufacturing process, but the starting material from the patient is highly variable. So you end up ultimately with quite a variable product because of the variable inputs, not because of a variable process. What we want to make sure is that we make these treatments available to patients, because many of these are meeting an otherwise unmet clinical need. and often they have very short shelf lives. So you can't have a situation where you might have an out of spec and then you can go and talk to the regulator and we can have a discussion and then work out what to do and then we make a decision, because by that time the product's gone, it's expired. So in the interest of doing the right thing by the patient, there is provision in the guidance to say where there is agreement with the treating physician that the out of specification is acceptable for clinical treatment, treat the patient. But then notify the regulator to say that's been done. If it's a clinical trial, that may be a substantial amendment to the trial. It might even be that that patient is excluded from the trial because of the nature of the deviation. But I think we just need to make sure that we're striking the right balance between making effective treatments available and the specification that's registered. So that's that specific provision in there for those, we hope, limited situations.
Great, David. I'd like to ask Emily what her thoughts are on this.
I mean, we see a lot of issues come by, and it can be very difficult. We have to balance that risk with the benefit, the risk of patient not having product to the risk of the product itself. So we work with a team within the agency to make that determination before something goes out. Do we want product going out of spec? Of course we don't. But if that means that someone is not going to have treatment and we can do something with working with industry to lessen that risk, then we'd rather have product to patient.
Thanks. I think what you both are speaking to some extent, though, is the spec has to be the right spec, because the degree of variability in patients can be significant for products, particularly these products, as David mentioned. So that could have an impact. And I wonder, Joey, how the WHO would look at that, considering that you're providing some very important recommendations to a lot of different countries about how to manage this.
Thanks for that question, and that is exactly also the WHO approach. We look at the risk to patient, looking at, do we going to have a product on the market or are we going to have no product on the market? We then look at working with the manufacturer of that specific product to look at possibilities of additional testing, maybe additional quality control aspects, maybe additional requirements for that specific batch of product to make sure that that product eventually gets to the patient. Because we would rather have some kind of product on the market, again, based on risk, than no product on the market. We see that quite often within Africa, where there's one or two manufacturers manufacturing a vaccine, just that one specific vaccine for the entire African region. Now, do you close the manufacturer or do you ensure that there are additional quality aspects built into the entire process?
So that flexibility is really key, especially for those modalities that are more complicated. Thank you. So we do have a question, please.
Thank you for the opportunity and good afternoon. I was wondering if you could talk...
By the way, can I ask you to identify yourself?
Do I have to?
You could just say, Joe Smith from...
It's just a Joe Smith from a pharmaceutical manufacturer.
Write that down, Lawrence.
Actually, we have your picture. I'm sure Google will find it.
I wanted to ask the question, as we look at repurposing older facilities and bringing in new modalities, such as viral vector technologies, can you talk a little bit about your expectations around the segregation between, say, a viral vector technology and a mature biopharmaceutical product?
And who did you direct that to, Mr. Smith?
It's to the panel.
To the panel? Rapti, do you want to try that one?
It's on.
Yeah.
It's on. Thank you.
When you, that's kind of a little bit of a difficult question because, first of all, we are not in the biotech space, and at least our group is with small molecules, and we don't really have to deal with viral clearance. But with repurposing a near old facility, you're still expected to meet the current CGMP requirements. and you need to make adjustments to come and update the facility, because there is no point in updating a facility and having the same old problems. And the way we see is that most of these older facilities are being morphed into much more smaller, more agile, more advanced kinds of facilities. So there's a big change going in the pharmaceutical manufacturing sector, so that maybe 10, 20 years from now, we may not be seeing these giant manufacturing flows that we've seen previously.
Right, right. Rafael, Renata, would you like to try to address that?
Well, in fact, it's hard to answer this question. My experience is more in small molecules, but we had some discussions at Anvisa recently regarding where will this kind of product be analyzed, whether by the same office of biologicals or by a different office, and there's a different office taking care of these issues now, because some of these products have very specific, have so many specificities. So we understand that as for many different technologies, we need to train, and we need to have a better understanding of the product. So. Don't know if I answered, but that's what I have.
Mr. Smith, did you have a follow-up?
No, that's very helpful. We're assuming that we do the risk assessments and so on and so forth, but I just wanted to get a perspective. Thank you.
You're welcome. Terry?
Yeah, Tommy Lee Jones from, unfortunately, I think a lot of those people up there recognize me. Terry Ochiltree, a farm tree consultant. Wanted to ask, since we got this great panel up here, is ICHQ 12 hopefully is going to be reaching step 4 soon. And with it moving forward, I'd like to find out from the regulatory agencies, what do you see as being the most important aspect of it? And also, what's going to be the most difficult aspect to introduce within your agencies?
Who wants to start? You want me to answer that?
You're the chair, so.
But I'm not on the panel. So why don't we start with Rapti?
So I come from the review side of the FDA, Office of Pharmaceutical Quality. So for us, ICHQ 12 is very forward-thinking, and it will be very useful for us to manage our post-marketing workload, because that is just ballooning. It's like a snowball that keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger with every approval. So we really look forward to the ICHQ 12, but at the same time, we see challenges. And some of the challenges that we see is, I'll mention a couple, is that getting an application to an approval status during the review cycle is difficult enough. And so we have a lot of things that we need to look at and close the loopholes and come to agreements with. And now we are now looking at it from a post-marketing change management perspective. So it adds an added layer of additional scrutiny that we need to give. So that itself, to manage within the current timeline, is challenging. The other component that we struggle with is that there is a huge reliance on the quality management system. Many regulators, and I'm not saying it's just FDA, I'm sure it will happen with even other regulatory agencies, they would accept a lot of change management ideas if they had full confidence in a site's quality management system. But we really don't have a very good way of quantitizing or having a good idea of how good is the site's quality management system. There is no metric right now. And the QMS is also subject to change over life cycle. It could become better, it could become worse, it could change hands under new leadership or new ownership. And so if the QMS is itself a changing factor in this, to make an agreement on some of the Q12 becomes a little bit challenging for us.
Can I riff off of what you just said and ask David about the quality management system and how we might get more confidence in that quality management system. And I'm going to call it the pharmaceutical quality system because it's a little bit broader than just the change management. There are other aspects. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so clearly Q12 is building on those concepts, and I think some of the really key parts to the effective implementation of Q12 is making sure that pharmaceutical quality system is implemented throughout the supply chain. So that is likely in many products to include facilities that are not based in ICH regions. So then the question is, how do we build assurance of an acceptable pharmaceutical quality system? I think Q12 uses the phrase an effective pharmaceutical quality system. So how do we do that across all of the sites and all of the territories for the globalized supply chain? It also, by inference, although not explicitly, it extends it to the marketing authorization holder having a pharmaceutical quality system. Now, nowhere does it say that in black and white, but the only way that you can effectively implement Q12 and manage the changes through multiple sites is by having one. And regulators, part of your question was what are the challenges? And I think that's one of them. That there are not, across different territories, no routine programs often of inspections of marketing authorization holders. So how do you assess the effectiveness of their quality system? That's an interesting question. And likewise for many territories for active substances, there's an obligation on the manufacturer of the dosage form and in Europe the qualified person to ensure compliance. And there are for-cause regulatory inspections of active substances, but not absolutely full coverage routine programs. So I think those are some challenges there. The other challenge that I would mention in particular is one of communication. That's in industry throughout their supply chain so that everybody knows where they are in that change management program. So do you know what the marketing authorization is at any given time, given that what was registered may have changed through post-approval change management plans? But also communication between regulators so that a product that may be registered in the US but touches manufacturing facilities in Europe, how do we know what's in your approved change management protocols so that we can confirm that there's compliance with those? So yeah, absolutely, it's great to build on Q8 through Q11 to implement some of these things, and it's absolutely achievable, I'm sure. We just need now, in the regulatory space, to work out how we're going to effectively deliver this to make sure that it works, and that's the next step in the process, I'm sure.
Thanks, David. Did you want to comment, Rafael?
Yes. Regarding Q12, we have big expectations regarding Q12 because nowadays we are clearly in a very difficult position regarding post-approval changes workload because we are not able to respond to this workload given the workforce that we have right now. So it's a very big problem that we have, and we understand that Q12 is very important in solving it. So that's the positive part of Q12. Just as a matter of comparison, we don't have as many post-approval changes as Europe or the FDA, but we have much more post-approval changes than Australia, for instance. So we have a big workload of post-approval changes, and we understand Q12 will help us to manage it better. But we have many challenges. Some of them my colleagues already mentioned it, but specifically regarding Anvisa, our registration requirements are quite recent compared to other agencies, to the FDA, to the European agencies. So most of products registered today, they are not in line with current registration practices. 50% of our products were registered before 2002. And before 2002, there was, Anvisa has just been created. So we have older products that have poor dossiers. We don't have much information on the dossiers. And it's a big challenge for Q12. Old products, new products, they have their challenges, but in my opinion, old products will be more challenging for us.
Joey, do you mind if I ask you the same question? Because one of the concerns that industry has is when we file post-approval changes, it can take 7 years to get a single change approved, and part of the reason is capacity. The other part is because of the lack of definition sometimes in what the change is. In the WHO perspective, how do you see Q12 playing out?
For WHO, it's a huge challenge. Because when we look at the way that WHO operate, we pre-qualify or register products for purposes of the United Nations agencies to actually buy those products and deliver those products in the low and middle income countries. Secondly, we also pre-qualify those products to allow low and middle income countries that do not have any regulatory system in place to actually tap into some kind of product where they know the quality had been looked at. So that's the challenge. Now, if we look at the life cycle of the product, we also receive applications for change management and for variations. And we evaluate those and we approve those. But then when you go back into the distribution chain, this product could be delivered into Africa in one of the countries, but there's no regulatory system in that country. So how do you make sure that the product that you've pre-qualified is actually the product that is reaching that specific country? There's no ways that we can do that. The only way is that the United Nations agencies that's buying that product has implemented some kind of quality system in their agencies, and they use that quality system to make sure that the product that they actually buy is then the product that is being pre-qualified. So going forward for WHO, it will be a challenge.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you all. Yes, Lawrence.
You know, since I joined the FDA and the annual meetings, including ISPE meeting, PDA meetings, one of the common theme come out from audience, from ourselves, is the challenge is the post-marketing management. You said it takes 7 years because of inconsistency among regulatory bodies. So I truly believe, I'm not involved in ICH Q12, it's a significant advanced compared to current system right now. I know it's a challenge for all the regulatory agencies, but I'm asking industry for patience, and regulators do need to embrace it because this is advanced. We have to make changes tough, changes difficult, but unless we make a progress somewhere, where otherwise we'll continue to stay where we are, which is likely, for example, we have roughly 7,000 supplements, 7,000, 9,000 supplements day in, day out. So there's a lot of things come back and forth, and the ICH Q12 is represent advance, and I ask industry and the regulator really need to embrace that, because otherwise, tomorrow we talk about the same thing, it takes 7 years or not, and tomorrow, of course, workload will become 9 years. Thank you.
So he's asking for something, but he holds this OAI over your heads. Think about that.
Well, Rogers, that's the beauty of the OPQ is we deal with the VAI and AI. When it go to OAI, it go to office compliance. Francis and Don actually deal with it, so yeah. We're always a good guy. So
sweep it.
Thank you.
Okay, Terry, did you want to follow up at all? No, that's good. All right, anybody else out there? I don't see anybody else. Can we have another pigeonhole? I like that sounds cool, pigeonhole. How do you anticipate Brexit affecting the way MHRA meets its mandate, and how will it affect inspection planning and strategy? So before we met today, we kind of wanted to stay a little bit away from speculating on where Brexit's going to go, because it really would only be speculation. And again, I'm going to, David, unless you want to take a stab at that question, I was going to say maybe we can go to another question. Do you want to say anything about that?
At very high level.
Okay.
How will it affect our mandate? It won't, because we are the national regulator for the UK, and we will continue to fulfill that function in any future scenario. With respect to inspections, we still will have a risk-based GXP inspection program the same way that we always have, and we will continue to work with our regulatory partners to effectively implement that. So potentially, and we don't know because there's still, as Roger mentioned, some things to be worked out. We don't know exactly what that will look like, but what it achieves in terms of protecting public health, supporting innovation, getting products to patients, those will remain the same.
Very good, thank you. Tim, another pigeonhole? Question? Is there a concerted effort among health authorities to share inspection and/or review findings? Are there any new initiatives to increase transparency of findings to industry? You know, Emily, do you mind? You don't want to go there? Because you don't share anything with drug shortages, do you?
I don't think this will answer that question, but
okay.
We do work with the other health authorities with regards to shortages. So we will, we convene with them as needed, but quarterly on a regular basis to discuss any issues we're having,
okay.
discuss issues they're having, and share information if we can through our MOU. So we don't, that's not quite where they were getting,
no,
but
I know.
We do have good communication with the other health authorities.
Lourdes, do you want to try to address that?
So this is one is related to inspection, which is, I think, MRA is one of the, you know, we share the information, already see the benefit, and especially when the facility, we saw a significant issue, and whether EMEA or the FDA found a significant issue, we communicate each other, we inspect together, and so there's significant achievement compared to we used to be. It's also in assessment area now. We also have a concerted effort agreement between across the Atlantic Ocean with EMA, and also we have a working on right now for the oncology drug with Health Canada, Singapore, Australia, those are the Switzerland, and Frank, as we call the oncology co-review. So there's a lot of concerted effort trying to reduce the regulatory bodies, help each other. So there's effort ongoing, whether it's the review side, whether inspection side. Thank you. Just to name a few.
Oh, very good. Thank you. David, did you want to talk about it?
Yeah, so there's a number of different programs for sharing information. So Lawrence just talked about sharing information in the context of the MRA. There's an ongoing initiative amongst BICS authorities called the GMP Inspection Reliance Initiative, which is designed specifically to share information, to build trust amongst national regulators who are part of the BICS scheme, with the overall aim of not performing so many international inspections, or at the very least trying to reduce the scope and the duration of those. So using the information from other partner agencies with whom we've built trust to reduce some of that burden both on ourselves and also in industry. So those are quite important initiatives, and we're starting to see some use of those, and that will continue to build. In terms of other work to make inspection findings more transparent, relatively hot off the press within the last couple of weeks, MHRA has published a raw data set of our inspection findings. So some of you in the audience may already be aware of that. So for a number of years, we've published our own assessment of what we see as common themes, significant issues from our inspections across the world. That's just our view on it, and we take that from a relatively neutral position in terms of just giving a broad brush review of where we think industry is. We've taken that a step further and published in Excel format an anonymized data set of all of our findings to paragraph level of the GMP guide. What that will then enable you to do, if you wish to, is using things like pivot tables, is you can slice and dice that data in whatever way is best for your needs. So for instance, if you have a particular supply chain that is focused in one area of the world, you can do your own data analysis of those deficiencies for that area of the world, or even for a particular type of manufacturer in that area of the world. So that's something that we're going to continue to build on to provide that information in a way that is most accessible and useful to industry.
Very good. Joey.
Maybe from a WHO perspective, just also to add, we've got a very simple system. Once a month, we have a telecon with FDA, EMEA, MHRA, and we discuss either inspections to be conducted at API sites, at finished product sites, specifically looking at sterile products, and at BE sites. We discuss those specific activities. We discuss planning of inspections. At that specific point, we decide on who's going to go with whom to which sites. And we also share inspection outcomes, so that if WHO had inspected a specific site and the outcome was negative or positive. We share that, and with a brief summary on what we found during that negative inspection or where the outcome was negative. So monthly, we actually do know what is happening across the globe but unfortunately at this point in time, it's not all finished products, it's only finished products relating to steriles.
Are you going to extend it beyond?
It could be that there's initiative to extend that, but at this point in time, I cannot confirm.
Okay. Any other questions from out in the audience? George.
Hi, George Malili, Genentech. With industry moving forward, we're seeing a lot of new innovative technologies being evaluated and being brought forward in the exciting area of biotechnology. A general question on quality systems. Could any of you reflect on the need for a company to reassess how they work with these type of accelerated filings and these new technologies? Is the quality systems we've been working in the past acceptable for the quality systems that we need to use for accelerated activities? Any general comments are appreciated.
Who wants to raise their hand?
I'll take it.
David will answer it from the one perspective. Repti, do you want to answer? Because you see some of the innovations.
I think what I would say is that as we start to implement advanced technologies, whatever that technology is, what we see is that the facility aspect and the actual technology gets closer and closer together. It's no longer sufficient to consider the submission review separately from the facility aspects. You have to link the two of them together, and that's the only way that you can make a holistic assessment of it. So in order to do that, their quality system has to keep up with the advanced technology. And many times the old quality system that you have in place, the elements are there, but the specifics for that particular technology may not be within that system. So you need to upgrade that quality system to incorporate the new technology, train the people, have the right documentation and all that. So the two can no longer be viewed separately. It has to be more like a holistic evaluation.
David.
So I think, to your question, I think the elements of the quality system are still fit for purpose, but the way in which they're used needs to be different. So if we look at ICH Q8 through Q12, they all talk about the concepts of control strategies, not control measures, but control strategies. And I think the concept of the control strategy is probably one of the most important concepts that we've seen in recent times in GMP, because it's not just about the individual measures anymore, it's about really understanding your product and your process, knowing what matters through development or through the implementation of the technology, and then working out how you're going to design your process and monitor it with the feedback loops back through the quality system to make sure that a state of control is maintained. And that's quite a different delivery of those individual elements compared to perhaps the more traditional approach of, I monitor my complaints or I look at the rate of deviations. It needs to be a much more holistic review now, and that's something that in our agency we're starting to really focus on.
Anyone else? Raphael, did you have anything to add?
Well, from my perspective, the pharmaceutical quality review is able to evolve a lot. And it's important, as my colleagues already mentioned it, we are walking to a holistic review that includes pharmaceutical quality system, not only the documentation that is submitted to us, but the pharmaceutical quality system as a whole. So it's important that the companies have it in mind, because even more and more we will get deeper into the quality system, and new technologies will also allow us to allow you to have a better evaluation. We have the ICH guidelines Q8, 9, and 10 that have a different approach of the quality system. So it's important to have this in mind. It's important for us to increase the communication between reviewers and inspectors, because the review should also consider the pharmaceutical quality system. It's not possible possible for us to do to work in different boxes. So that's.
Thank you. So Frank, we'll let you have the last question. Well, I think, what do we have, 5 minutes left? 5 minutes. We'll see if it's the last question.
Depends how long now. We've heard a few examples of some of the reliance activities that are being progressed now by the major regulatory authorities, as well as some of the smaller agencies that had been doing that. What's the ambition of the regulators in terms of how far that can go? And what do you see as some of the challenges? And I recognize Raphael mentioned commonality of information submitted and post-approval changes has been one, but where do you see the real challenges in taking reliance to the furthest extremes that you could deliver?
You want to start, Raphael?
Okay. Well, we at Anvisa, we want to go ahead with reliance. We wouldn't work with recognition, meaning recognition as an automatic decision or other agency's decision, but we want to advance with the reliance, which is we consider the decision of other agencies in our decision. So we still have to take the decision, but we consider the reports from other agencies, the inspection reports, the reviewer reports. So that's what we would like to receive the reports and be able to take decision. I think it's. Are you hearing me well? Yeah. Okay. So we want to go to this direction. In order to do it, first we need to harmonize the requirements. Today, I think the most what makes companies submit different dossiers in Brazil is that the requirements are different. Not only the technical requirements, but the order, our checklist is different. So sometimes your Brazilian regulatory team needs to break the CTD dossiers in small parts and submit all these small parts in Brazil, and it's a nightmare. And we are willing to change that. It's the basis for the reliance. We need to receive the same documentation, or if not the same documentation, we need to be clear on what's different. Sometimes specifications need to be different because we have different stability requirements because of temperature, for instance. But it's important for us to receive either the same documentation or to have a clear understanding of where it's different and why it's different. So we would like to go in this direction.
Lawrence?
You want me to comment?
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm not commenting the lines, but I do, when you see about the CMC each section CDD format, you know, in the Sarah session yesterday about the QoS, I do see the needs. The CDD format was developed, I would say, 40 years ago in 80s. And certainly in 40 years later, the house is very old, sometimes falling down. I think that as the ICH may take on a different topic, and truly, and also 40 years ago versus today's landscape completely changed. A lot of developing countries like Brazil and China, India come to play. Maybe it's time for ICH to look at a CDD format Q, because this has really become hindrance to advanced quality altogether. So I'm advocating. I do not know exactly, at least my own personal view. I have not talked to the FDA, but I think it's time for all the regulators to look at it, the CDD-Q format, to see what can we develop, the revise or transform to fit our needs, whether it's developing countries or developed countries all together.
Do you see that as a mechanism to enable mutual reliance?
I think so.
Okay.
Because some cases so when doing the CDD format development, certainly we're not able to tell your story. You know, from the P1, P2, P3 section is not very cohesive. And also some of the countries are not involved at all. So they made their own home-developed version. Those home-developed versions versus ICH certainly is not consistent. That's create significant issues for all the regulators around the world. So I think if we develop it's kind of 40 years old, it's time to develop, to really look at it, to see what can we do better. I truly believe we can do much, much better if the CDD format get agreement among this country, which will not be easy, requires a lot of patience. I think that include the WHO, it will be facilitate advanced of quality altogether. And probably it's the much easier to manage in the life cycle management as well. Thank you.
Joey, in terms of mutual reliance, we've kind of gone off to the CTD and talking about the application, but in terms of mutual reliance for WHO, how do you see that playing out going forward?
It's very true that regulators around the globe realize today that you cannot do anything. You cannot do everything on your own anymore. You have to tap into the knowledge that is out there. And that knowledge is in terms of reliances from your colleagues in other regulatory authorities. But first of all, you must have the trust in those other regulatory authorities. And the only way that you can have the trust in what they're doing is to understand what they're doing and understand how they evaluate and understand how they inspect. So that's why the common standards and guideline documents become more and more important. And one of the beautiful examples of reliance and harmonization and understanding the same concepts was the latest development of Annexure 1, where WHO together with BICS, together with EMA, work together on this specific guidance document of Annexure 1 to make sure that we are one voice and we speak from one specific chair. And lastly, if we then look at the information that is available on the specific aspect that is under consideration, the regulatory authority, or WHO in this instance, will have to look at that information and make an informed decision if the information available to them at that specific point do address the issues that is important for WHO, and then make an informed decision to either accept or not accept the information out there that WHO tried to rely on.
Okay. David, any final words on mutual reliance from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks. So I think you used the word ambition. I think we need to go big on ambition, but be realistic on delivery. So the ambition, we have a global supply chain, we need global harmonization. That's what we need to have as the long-term vision, but are we going to deliver that by the end of next year? Probably not. So I think, we need to work and continue to work towards that. And I think one of the biggest things that we need to think about in that process is the political will to do it. Because if we're going to really have that harmonization, we need to have the harmonization of the standards and the approaches, and that's going to take a lot of give and take amongst all of the regulators to reach that harmonized position, because I guess naturally there's an issue of sovereignty there, and everybody likes their own system. So I think there's, that's a whole bigger conversation, but that's what we need to be aiming for, because if we don't, we're never going to get there.
Thanks. Frank, anything else?
No, that was great. That was great.
Good.
Good to hear the ambition.
So we've kind of reached the end of the time. I don't know, we probably have a ton more questions. But I guess without the time we could do that, maybe folks can come up and talk to these folks at a later date. So I want to thank, am I closing? Oh, good. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I hope this session was very informative and productive. I want to thank the panel. They did an outstanding job. Thank you very much. And I guess we're done. Thank you. Oh, Tim, sorry.
Just one closing comment before we thank the panel. We received over 63 questions in Pigeonhole, which was fantastic. We're going to be taking those to the RQHC, so we will be trying to address those back to the membership. They didn't go ignored, but what we tried to do is try to balance those out for the panel up here. So even though some of them had higher votes, we recognize that we want to make sure we touched upon a variety of different topics for expertise. So with that said, thank you very much for your time, and one more round of applause.